Hello, thank you for stopping by. My name is Richard Pepe. Are there any important issues in the Middle East where the United States has one position and Israel has another position? Should there be any important differences? Is the location of the U.S. Embassy in Israel an important issue or not an important issue? The June 2nd Wall Street Journal had a couple of interesting pieces on this issue. One was written by Daniel Pipes, who I think anybody would identify as a Jewish neocon, and one is an editorial by the paper itself. And of course, the paper itself, I think, from the position of most people, would be considered a neocon paper. But Pipes makes an interesting observation. He says that actually Israel's position is strengthened a little when relations between America and Israel are not too good. That when America feels it has done more than enough and Israel has received enough benefits, it may be vulnerable to blackmail by the United States to make concessions it doesn't feel it can safely make. So the general tenor of the piece was that while Israelis were disappointed that Trump did not move the embassy, they are basically pleased with Trump. They think he is a more friendly figure to them than Obama was. This, to a certain extent, is continued in the editorial, the short editorial, that claims the Israelis were disappointed. Trump went back on his promise. He made a promise. No one forced him to make the promise. He should have kept the promise. The Israelis are still pro-Trump, pro-the United States. But what is going to happen, according to the Wall Street Journal, is that the Palestinians are going to pocket the concession and then ask for more. Now, Pat Buchanan, as we know, has a different non-neocon position on the Middle East. He wants to begin to limit America's involvement in a lot of places, one being the Middle East. And he makes an interesting observation. In a recent podcast, he says, after whatever it's been, 15, 16 years, we are bogged down in Libya, we are bogged down in Iraq, and we are losing in Afghanistan. What have we gained from this expenditure of treasure and blood? I come to this issue with a different perspective than I would have had even 2 weeks ago. I think the news that the Sunnis, the ISIS, which is an offshoot of Sunni Islam, has attacked Iran inside Iran is bigger news than is being generally recognized. I think the United States, the people of the United States, are going to be forced to learn about the distinctions between Shia and Sunni Islam. There was an interesting book, very informative. I highly recommend it. I read it. I heard the author being interviewed, I think it was by Brian Lamb. And the man's name is Valley, V-A-L-I. Last name is Nasser, N-A-S-R. And it's entitled The Shia Revival. And he makes the observation that, and to me, he was absolutely prescient on this question, that it's going to, he predicted that the next radical Islamic terror group would come out of the Sunni. And of course, ISIS is a Sunni, basically, creation. The Sunnis are not going to accept the Shia accession to power easily or lightly. And I look at the decision to move the embassy within this framework is it in America's advantage to move the embassy now and enrage both the Shia and the Sunni on an issue that could be forestalled, that could be postponed? There's a more basic question that has to be resolved, I think, by the American leadership and by the part of the American people. On Sunday nights, I enjoy listening to a podcast on YouTube called Beauty and the Beta. It's a very attractive young couple. I enjoy their talk, their banter. They interview different people. They're very informative. So I pour myself 2 inches of bourbon and get a couple of ice cubes and enjoy an hour of their talk. But the blonde, who comes across as both very smart and up to date, but very aggressive against Islam. But I have never heard her talk about Sunni. I've never heard her talk about Shia. She wants to deal with them as one humongous enemy of the United States. And I think a lot of people feel that way. She basically, in a way, reflects the Trump base, parks on both your houses. But I don't think the United States is going to be able to maintain that perspective if this Shia-Sunni split really gets intense. And I think it will get intense. I think this attack inside Iran is going to demand an Iranian response, which is to say a Shia response. And we know something about wars. We know something about wars in Northern Ireland. We know something about wars in Eastern Europe when Yugoslavia split apart. When people start to die, your choice to avoid getting involved begins to minimize. We've all heard the story that the Shia and the Sunni, before Iraq erupted, were in the same neighborhoods. After 2 or 3 years of bloodletting, the Sunnis are in one neighborhood, the Shia in another neighborhood. To a certain degree, that happened in Northern Ireland during the Troubles, so to speak. And it happened in Eastern Europe. I think maybe some of you may have seen this special on a basketball player who I think was Serb, who was best of friends with another basketball player who also came to the United States, but who was not a Serb. And they were the best of friends for years, talked all the time. And then the Serb split arose, bloodshed. Yugoslavia begins to split apart. They never talked again. And I think that's ahead of us in the Middle East on the Sunni-Shia split, whether we like it or not. I think that we're going to have to make some decisions, whether we like it or not, on who the United States is more compatible with. And I'm not sure that this can be filtered precisely or only through the filter that Israel would filter it through. Clearly, Israel now sees Iran, and by extension the Shia minority, as its number one enemy. Maybe that reflects the fact that Iranians have shown themselves to be better engineers at developing nuclear technology than their Arab competitors. I don't know. But it's not going to be an issue that can be resolved without looking at it. Egypt, of course, is a Sunni state, as is Saudi Arabia. And these have been, I think anyone would agree, the most important states to American statecraft. It's going to be tough to, in a sense, go to war against the Sunni ISIS without perhaps injuring your relationships with Egypt and Saudi Arabia. We haven't seen this play out yet. Stay tuned. Thank you for watching.